In this video, my aim is just to try and give you an overview of how to use the Trados AI Monitor and point you to some things that are quite helpful and hopefully ensure that you get some use without too much heartache over working with the Trados AI Monitor. So the first thing to note, I've opened the application up already here, is that my proxy server is stopped, so it's using a proxy server. Just a bit of a hint there, if you hit your Windows key and type in proxy settings, this will open up a small window in Windows. If I can get it to fit the screen. Oh dear, I thought it was just my own applications that had problems with this. It's Windows as well. Just try and make that fit. Oh, there we go. Make that fit. So down here you can see we've got the proxy server. It's currently saying off. Once I start monitoring, that's going to switch to on. So if at any point you have a problem or something crashes or something like that, and you find you've lost an internet connection, it's worth double checking by going to here and seeing and making sure that that's turned off. I have tried to build something into the application to recognize all the different crashes that might happen and ensure that it closes it gracefully so that you don't have a problem. But if you do, and you suddenly find you've lost internet connection, this is the place to go, proxy server, and make sure when you set it up that that is off. Okay, so that's just a useful bit of information, I hope. So back to the Trados AI Monitor. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on Start Monitoring, and I'll explain why in a second. So I'm going to start the monitoring. You didn't see, but in the background then I got a UAC warning. And then this little window popped up just telling me that it's about to start using it. That's needed in order to access the calls that Trados Studio is making out using WinHTTP. I'll explain that a bit better in a second. But in the meantime, I'm going to start Trados Studio up because I don't have Studio running yet. And it's important that you do things in this order. So you start the monitoring with the application running and only then start Trados Studio. And the reason for that is if I go back to my browser here and I click on the localization exchange, just to show you where to find all this stuff if you haven't seen it already, click on the Trados AI Monitor and then go down to the bottom here. So you'll find a bit of a description of the application. There's a bit of information about the UAC prompt, which I just explained there. So Windows is going to ask you if you want to make changes to your device. You just say yes, because if you don't say yes, you won't be able to use the application. It needs that in order to be able to run with administrative privileges and properly pick up the calls. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is why I started this application before Trados Studio. And the reason for that is that as far as I can understand, and I haven't checked this with a developer who understands all this stuff really well, but when Trados Studio starts up, I think it checks to see if there's a proxy configured. And if there's no proxy, it remembers no proxy, and it will use that setting for the entire time it's running. So you'll have a direct connection out to the internet, and it will not be using your proxy, which means you won't pick any calls up. So if you start it, or it might pick some up, but it'll be inconsistent. I've had very inconsistent results with that, but if you do it in this order, it's pretty good. So you start the proxy running first, and then when Studio starts, it'll say, is there a proxy? Yes, there is. I will use the proxy. And that way all the calls will be picked up. So that's essentially what I'm asking you to do. So if I go back to the application, and I'll just very quickly show you the settings before I start up Studio and we start looking at this in detail. I've translated it into many languages, mainly because I wanted to experience myself what it was like trying to deal with resource strings. So sort of eat my own, what's the right word? I was going to use a terrible expression somebody said to me once, but anyway, I want to eat my own dog food. So I've translated in lots of different languages. They have been done using AI. I tried to get them as well as I could by sharing the screenshots to give a bit of context to the AI and try and improve the quality of it, but it's not always great, and sometimes they're too big, don't fit on too much, and I definitely need to spend a bit of time working through that. So rather than me do it myself and still get it wrong, if anybody uses the interface in a different language and finds things that need to be changed, please do tell me. Just you can drop me a note through the support portal, which you'll have access to if you've licensed the app and you're using it. And then you can actually tell me what's wrong, and I promise I'll correct them. Then I have the settings. The settings page is a fairly straightforward thing. In here, you have all the different models that are installed by default. And by install, it means I just support them. I support them at this point by adding them into this table. The information you see in here is based on the last time I checked, which was actually the 1st of November, not the 11th or the 9th or the 10th. I found a little bug in here that when I messed around with these, sometimes it changed the date in here. The date is irrelevant, really, and I'll fix that so that it doesn't do that. But the important thing is that if you find that OpenAI changed their pricing, you can go in and change the pricing for whichever model you're using so that it's appropriate and becomes accurate again. This is just a starting point, and it contains all the right placeholders. If you develop your own models, or if OpenAI release a new one and it's not in here, you can add a new model, give it the model ID, the display name you want, and whatever the rates are that are with it. And over time, I don't know what sort of frequency. I suppose it'll depend how many changes I need to make or how big a need there is. I'll update the default installer so that we have improved versions over time. That's the way that works. There is a feature in the application called Explain, which allows you to take a look at the calls that have been sent out and the calls coming back and how many tokens were used and the cost. And you can click the Explain button and it will use AI to then explain to you how many tokens are being used and why and what the costs were. And it will match it to the call that you made, the explanation. The explanation itself is based on this prompt. I put the prompt in there because it gives you an idea of perhaps how to write a prompt if you weren't sure yourself beforehand. You can correct this and make as many changes as you like in here. Just make the changes and close. It'll be saved automatically. And if you want the explanations in another language, I left the explain in English in my example here. I can't remember if that was in the install one, but if not, you can just explain in whatever language you like, and the explanations will come out in that language. So there's no need for me to do any sort of localization there, obviously, because that's going to be different every time you click explain. But you can have it with language. But of course, you will need your API key for that. So you just enter your API key in here. You pick the model you want to use, and it will base it on whichever models you have in this table. So you can select the one you want. I've used GPT 4.1 Mini because it's cheap and fast, and it works quite well. So those are the settings. There's also a small about box, which looks like that. Nothing really useful in there other than just to clarify the version number, who it's currently registered to. So there it's registered to me. And you've got the link to support in case you've forgotten it, but you will have received an email for that. So that's how the application is set up. It's monitoring already. I started Trados Studio in the background, so we should be good to go. So if I just open up Trados Studio here, which is taking up half the screen, which is good. What I want to do is have this also take up half the screen. So I'm just going to pull that down here and drop it over there. So now we've got one on each side. Might be a little hard to see when it's this small, but hopefully you'll get the idea. So what I'm going to do is first of all, just check in my options and make sure that I've got look ahead turned off, which I have. I will show you what happens if it's turned on again, but I just want to explain first of all without the confusion that this can sometimes cause. And in my project settings, I've enabled the language pairs, all language pairs. I wish there was a button there just to go straight to this one instead of having to work through there. Anyway, to OpenAI provider for Trados Studio. There we go, like that. So that's what I'm using. So I'm going to open the file up, and as I do that, keep an eye on this side of the screen, and we should get the calls coming through. So I open up the file, and that's because I'm automatically populating the target segment. I've also got a setting in Studio for that. Sorry, I should have shown you that one as well, but I'm sure most of you know about that. So it's searching for a result, and when it finds it, there we go. We've been sent 2 results through, and we kind of would have expected to see 1. That's the first thing I wanted to explain to you. So the result has come through. It sent the source segment and received a response. So if I click on the first one, you can see there it will then tell me which model's been used, how many tokens for the prompt, how many cached. This is unlikely to be used unless we're doing some massive sentence, maybe some legal translations. Maybe. I'm not confident we'll ever see that worked in the way we're using it here, but you never know. And then a completion, the number of tokens, giving me a total of 427 and a cost of 0.25 cents, which is fairly cheap. You can see that I've sent, in this case, the source that's been sent is glossary. It's there, and it's returned a value of glossa. So this is my request. You can click on the copy button there, which will copy it to your clipboard, and then you could paste that into an email to explain or ask a question or something like that if it was convenient. And the same thing with the response. So in here, you could actually just copy the response if you wanted to, and that would be fairly helpful, I guess. Okay, then what else? We have two, which means in the first call, we've made two calls and used 791 tokens when actually we've only got one translation back. So why is that? So this begs a question, first of all. And if I click on the second one, you can see that it's exactly the same call. So it's done it twice. And I've checked this a lot now, and I believe, after having spoken to someone in one of the teams, that there's an open bug on this. So when you open the file, the first segment is called twice. This happens, it's a studio bug. It's got nothing to do with the OpenAI provider for Trados Studio, and it's got nothing to do with my application. I'm recording what's actually happened. But if you're testing this, in order to try and satisfy yourself what you're doing, I added these two columns in here, reference 1 and reference 2. And the reason I did it is because if I wanted to look at this later and export it and share it with somebody in Excel, for example, I can make a note of what I did. So here, the way I've been using it is I've only called segment 1. So for reference 1, I'm going to say segment 1. That's all I've called. For reference 2, I'm going to say exactly what it returned, and I'm going to say that it sent segment 1. I can't spell sent. It sent segment 1, and the second one, the reference is still segment 1 because that's what I sent. Sorry, I'm going to change that to returned because it might just returned segment 1. It also sent it, but sent and returned, it might make it easier. So I sent segment 1 again, and it returned segment 1. Okay. So that clarifies that. It's a bug. From here onwards, I should only get one at a time. So if I click on the next segment, see what we get. We're searching, and in a second, we'll get a result back. Here we go. We get it back. We get one back. It's returned the translation. If I click on here, you can see this time we've sent the source. The matter was left in abeyance. The reason I'm not reading out all these translations and everything else is because they're written in, I've forgotten what you call these. But it's not using normal letters entities. It's using entity values for all the letters. So it's a bit harder to see, but you could probably understand that. I've got some of the words there, die Angelegenheit. So you've got that there. In fact, you've got the words there as well with a bit of other information around the side of it. So this bit here would be the translation that's returned. Okay, and then so this one, I would say I've sent segment 2, and it returned segment 2. So that's why I added these little reference fields in there, just to make it easy for you to tag things as you're going along. If you're in full screen mode, if you've got this on a separate screen where it's a bit easier to work with, you'll see a bit more information in there, which makes it easier to see. But you get the general idea. So you can keep a record of everything that you're doing. I've made 3 calls in total. And in this session, I've used 1,298 tokens. It's cost me 0.75 cents. An average for call is 0.25 cents, clearly. So if I wanted to explain and see where that came from, I can click on the explain button. And this is going to take a couple of moments, but not too long. It's going to use my GPT-4 mini model and come up with a simple explanation. To actually get that explanation, it's used up 1,071 tokens. So yes, you're going to have to pay for those as well every time you click on explain. And these are a bit more expensive than making the calls as you use it because it's sending a lot more information. But it's evaluated. I've used 1,071 tokens for getting this particular call, 493 for the input, 578 for the output, and that's the cost, 0.07. And then the explanation itself, is going to take the call that I had selected, which was the third one, uses the actual number of tokens for each one. Am I still in that one there? You can see, so it was 213 tokens and 294. So I've got 213 there and 294 and 0 cached. So it's correct. Total tokens 507. And it's explaining to you how it's calculated. If you wanted more detail on the very specifics of how they were calculated, then adjust the prompt. And the more you adjust the prompt and play with it, the more granular this information is going to become. I've just used a very basic prompt there to explain the idea. So that works fairly nicely. And then if you were keeping a proper record of that, you could then come into here, because this one now, this is giving you the actual prompt that was sent, the request and the response. You can see it's quite big this time when I made the call to say, explain it. So you have to pay for everything here. So here I would just put reference, and this is explain segment 2, for example. And you can see GPT-4 mini. So that's how that works. So what I'm going to do now is show you what happens with look ahead. So if I want to go and do something else like this, the first thing I've got to do is, again, I need to refresh the server, the proxy server, to make sure it's all doing what I need it to do properly. So I don't need to delete all of this. I can if I want to, but I'll leave it for now. I've got a natural break with the explain #2, so I can have them all in one go. I'll just stop the monitoring. I should have gone to the proxy server. Actually, might have been able to see what's happening. Set up. It's still off. If I should have checked that while I was doing it, really, you could have seen that it was running. Maybe I'll flick back to it in a minute. Then I'm going to restart Studio. I'll just clear the segments first. Save them. Close it. So I don't forget. Now I'll go into the options and put the enable look ahead on there. So by now you'll have the idea how to use it. You can see I'm just going to show you the way I would use it when I'm testing with it and playing with it. So I'm going to close Studio. Then I'm going to start monitoring. I'm going to start Studio back up again. And I'm going to flick over to here. If I click on Setup. Oh, there we go. So I had to click on it twice. But anyway, user proxy server is now turned on. I didn't turn it on. I just clicked on the setup button and it did it by itself. So it just refreshed. So I'm currently using the proxy server. So you can see that from there. That's just how that worked. Come back to Studio. It was fairly quick getting started again. I'm using look ahead this time. So let's just open the file up. And for those of you who don't know how look ahead works, the idea behind look ahead is that when you click on the segment, it will automatically fetch that segment and the next. Oh, I'm getting a result from my TM. And the next 3 results is what it should have been fetching. So that you don't have to look them up more than once. That's the general idea. And you can see that when I've clicked on that, I've got several calls have come through again. In fact, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 calls that have come through when I opened this up. So in just getting one result, it's given me 5 calls. I'm not quite sure why it populated that one there. Maybe I clicked it by mistake and didn't notice it or something. I don't know. Anyway, and this is because of look ahead. So if I click on here, you can see the first one. It sent the source glossary. So here I'm going to put look ahead at the beginning, #1, just to remind myself what I did. And then it's going to be, let me just copy these to save me typing that all out as we go through here. So it returned 1. The second one, it's done the same thing. So this is the little bug we spoke about. So we know that this has returned 1. And here is my look ahead segment 1. So I only did the call while I was on segment 1. That's what the purpose is here. When I go to my next one, it's taken the matter was left in abeyance. So it's made a call to this one. The matter was left in abeyance, populated it for some reason. And this is going to be still look ahead call. So it's while I was on segment 1, and it returned segment 2. So you can see how I'm using that now. This one is look ahead while I'm on segment 1, and this is returned. The matter was left in abeyance, which is segment 2 again. So it's taken segment 2 twice. Let me just double check that. So segment 2 in there, the matter was left in abeyance. Segment 2 down there, the matter was left in abeyance. And you can see it's separate calls, not just this duplicating by the ID that gets returned for it. That changes as I flip between it. So there's definitely something funny going on there, and I don't know what that is. But it returned 2. And then this one down here is it's returned, or it's sent, the child was working along the wall, which is segment 3. So it's my look ahead effect from calling segment 1, and it's returned segment 3. And what I would have expected to see there, without this little bug that I'm sure the development team are going to fix when you open the file, is that it should have returned 1 and 2 and 3. So it should have made 3 calls. And the same as this one here should have just made 1 call. Should have just returned 1 instead of 2. And this one's made 5 instead of 3. So that explains that. And if I was to then go into segment 3, it shouldn't make any call because look ahead has already called segment 3. You can see we've got the results there. So the way look ahead works is when I click on this one, it shouldn't be making a call. So in theory, there should be no call to OpenAI after I've clicked on that one. And as you can see, there has been. And if I click back on here, 2 calls, in fact. I actually know, I would expect it to make a call. I would have expected it to make a call to pick up segment 4 and 5, and that's because I had only done initially segment 1. Sorry, I've got a bit confused there myself because of this flipping population there, and I forgot about it. So when I clicked on 3 that was already there, the initial call from segment 1 should have called segments 1, 2, and 3. So they're all picked up by look ahead. When I then click on segment 3, I shouldn't get charged for segment 3, but I should get charged for a call to segment 4 and 5 through look up it again. So we can validate that now as we're going through here. So I've been made 2 calls. The first one here is calling, these are all combustible materials, which is segment 4. So this is correct. So this time, my look ahead call was based on me being in segment 3, because that's what I'm in when I made the call. It's returned segment 4, which is correct because segment 3 should have already been in there because of the previous look ahead call. So that seems to have worked. And then this one down here is called, I consider that a declaration of war, which is segment 5. So this is returned segment 5, which is correct because of the look ahead. And this is, again, the call I made while I was in segment 3. So that's how I use it. That's how I use it. That kind of makes sense in my own mind. I may not have explained that very well to you, but I hope that kind of makes some sense to you. So if I was to click down here in number 10 now, I would expect to get 3 calls. I'll just do that quickly. I should get a call for segment 10, a call for segment 11, and a call for segment 12, all in one go because I'm using look ahead. So once that searching finishes, I should get 3 calls. So there's the first one, there's the third one, or second one, and we should get a third one. It's a bit slow. Don't know why it's so slow coming through. There we go. There's the third one. So we should just get those 3, which should give me 10, 11, and 12. And if I just click on them quickly, that's segment 10, the shocking ill treatment of Kashmiris. That's segment 11 if you engage in eventing, and that's segment 12. Take too many of these and you'll see kaleidoscopic patterns. So that's all because of look ahead. That's the way that worked. And if I was to click into 11 now, I would expect to get 1 call, which would be to segment 13, because 11 and 12 are already there. So I should only get 1 more call there. Let's just stay there and see if we pick it up. It should be to segment 14, or 13, sorry. 1 call, and I click on that, and he took over the leadership, which is segment 13. So it's correct. I didn't bother filling those out as I was going along, just to save time. But you get the idea. It's working now. The only funny bit is when you first open the file, it's a bit weird. But anyway, I hope that gives you an idea of how it works. It's quite nice, I think. It finds everything that you may well need. And if you want to export that so you can then look at it later, so you don't have to keep doing this and using up your tokens, you just click on export. You can drop that file out wherever you like. And it's time stamped. You can see I've got one there from yesterday. I'm just going to remove that one. Oh, I've changed the name of this one now. I'm just going to overwrite that one. So we pick this one up. So I'm going to save it, replace it, and then I'm just going to pick it up. So there's my desktop, and I'll open the file. So I've got a message saying it's exported it. And I pick it up. So here it is. And if I pull it up here so we can see it, you can see it gives me the reference, the return, the timestamp, the model, the number of tokens, the request, the response. It's all in there. Just you can see it better probably if you do that. You can scroll down. You can see the whole thing because they're quite big, and I didn't want to completely fill up the Excel, but you could make these wider so they take up a bit of the space, but it gives you all the information that's in there. So you can take this and look at it at your leisure a bit later on. There's all the calls, and including even the ones where I didn't fill in the reference, where 1 or 2, they should be at the bottom. Yeah, there we go. So there's the ones I did at the end. So it's quite useful, I think. You can look at that later. You could send it to somebody to say, here's the calls, this is what's happening, please tell me what's going on, whatever your questions were. That's how it works. So I hope that was fairly helpful and explained really how it works. Don't forget to turn your monitoring off. We can just double check now. We can see that the monitoring is on here. Okay, if I stop the monitoring, that should, it says proxy server on, but if I edit it and cancel, I didn't need to turn it off. It was actually turned off. It's just refreshed itself. So don't forget, if you did get a problem using an internet page because Studio crashed or because the app crashed or something happened, just double check in your network an internet proxy and make sure that's turned off. And you'll probably find that that was the reason why you lost your internet connection. But so far, I think I've been fairly successful at picking up crashes. So all being well, you won't have to touch that. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening. Hope you found it useful. Enjoy using the application.